Thank you so much, Safa. Thank you so much for having me here on this program. It is wonderful to speak along with such an established and esteemed panel of colleagues. Thank you, Commissioner Anurima Bhargava, for your steadfast work over your entire tenure. We know that you will be leaving USERF next month at the end of your full tenure, long tenure. You've done outstandingly. Your contribution has been outstanding for the advancement of international religious freedom, not just on the issue of India, but across the world. So on behalf of the entire religious freedom community in the United States, especially the 18 organizations that co-organized this briefing, I would like to thank you and applaud your work. Thank you so much. Moving on, I have a confession to make, everybody. I knew that the USERF is going to recommend in CPC status for India. And how did I know that? Because I was watching Indian television news and some of the Indian digital websites. Now, of course, I'm kidding. This is sarcasm. But in the last few days, the Indian journalists who are big time supporters of the Indian government, the Hindu nationalists, they had started making a big noise about how the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom is anti-India. It is pro-Pakistan. It is funded by Pakistan. All of that nonsense that's been going on for years. It would be funny. It would be quite entertaining, actually, if it was not so tragic. Because one of the countries that is also consistently on the USERF's list of countries of particular concern is Pakistan. So apparently, on one hand, the USERF sanctions Pakistan or recommends that Pakistan be sanctioned. On the other hand, it also gets influenced by Pakistan's foreign policy and all the nefarious actors. Many of us who work on the issues of religious freedom and human rights right here in the United States, we know how the entire network, the proxies of Hindu nationalists, what I call the dirty tricks department, DTD, they come after us. They come after all and everybody who is working on this issue. Anybody who is working on this issue back in India, they are swiftly arrested. Nobody is beyond the pale of arrest from the Indian government and the Indian security agencies. Just 3 days ago, we saw a Dalit legislator from Gujarat, Jignesh Mewani. He was arrested by police in Assam, which is thousands of kilometers away from the state of Gujarat, where he lives and where he belongs and where he is a legislator. Because why? Because he had tweeted that Prime Minister Narendra Modi idolizes Nathuram Godse, who was the assassin of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, of course, that is too much to bear, because every time Mr. Modi goes out of India, he keeps talking about Mahatma Gandhi and Gandhi's vision. Of course, back in India, he rarely makes a visit to anything connected with Gandhi, unless it is to show off Gandhi's ashram in Gujarat to visiting dignitaries. But I don't blame Mr. Modi, because the entire story of Hindu nationalism is fundamentally full of hypocrisy and duplicity. If I were to describe Hindu nationalism, it's a fake story. It is in modern language, we would call it fake news. The entire Hindu nationalism, which is deployed currently in India at the largest levels, at federal levels and state levels, and nearly every single pillar of democracy in India seems to have crumbled under the weight of Hindu nationalism. This Hindu nationalism is entirely a fake construct. I don't want to get into too much of a history, but let me just jump to an event that happened in 1934, about 90 years ago. And at that point in time, there was a gentleman whose name comes up very rarely. His name was Dr. Munjay. Dr. Munjay was a Maharashtrian. He was a doctor. He was a physician. And he had recently traveled to Italy and famously, or rather infamously, met with Mussolini, who was the leader of the fascists. And he came back very, very impressed with Mussolini. We must remember that Hindu nationalists have had a deep respect, admiration, and love for Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. They have explicitly, over the decades, very openly said that we would like India to be ruled by a dictator such as Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. And that is the incident that happened in 1934. And Dr. Munjay wrote it in his diary back in 1934, where he was having a chat with the Hedgewar, who was the founder of the RSS, the The RSS calls itself the world's largest NGO. The RSS is the mothership. Narendra Modi became a member of the RSS when he was barely in his teenage. Most people you will find, India's president, India's vice president, they've all been members of the RSS. The RSS was founded in 1925 and with the single purpose of converting India into a Hindu nation. The belief of the RSS is very simple, that India is the land of the Hindus. Non-Hindus, especially Christians and Muslims, do not belong to India because their faith lies outside of India. The Christians and the Muslims, their gods and their places of worship are outside of India. Therefore, they do not belong to India. The only way they can be allowed to stay on in India is if they accept the supremacy of the Hindu faith, the Hindu culture, and Hindu religion. That pretty much is how the RSS has propounded its ideology over nearly 100 years. Now, this meeting that I'm talking about happened in 1934, barely 9 years after the RSS was founded by Dr. Hedgewar, another doctor. There's something about doctors. I wonder why they have such tremendous admiration for a very fascist and ethnocentric ideology, especially in India. So Dr. Munje and Dr. Hedgewar had a meeting, and Dr. Munje describes in his diary how they talked about and how he talked about the need for a dictator in India, an authoritarian leader in India. And he said the only way, and of course I'm paraphrasing, but this is available on Google, you can find it. But fundamentally, Dr. Munje said that we need a dictator. We need an authoritarian leader in India if we want to make India a Hindu nation. Why do I bring it up? I bring it up because right now, India has that dictator. India has that authoritarian leader in the form of Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister of India. And because his first and foremost instinct, and the first and foremost instinct of the very ideology of Hindu nationalism is authoritarianism, is state leading a crackdown on civil liberties. Therefore, all the pillars of Indian democracy have completely collapsed. Professor Rohit Chopra spoke a little bit about the Indian judiciary. Right now, we are literally looking at the Indian judiciary up and down the ladder as completely subservient, if not knowingly, then at least under tremendous pressure, maybe subconsciously, although I doubt that, completely beholden to the interests of the Hindu nationalist federal government of India. Earlier, one of the speakers spoke about, Commissioner Bhargava, I think, also referenced the hijab controversy. The High Court in Karnataka 2 months ago ruled that Muslim women and girls going to school and colleges cannot be allowed to wear the hijab, which completely goes against the fundamental rights enshrined and guaranteed in India's constitution. However, the Court of Appeal for a decision from the Karnataka High Court lies with the Supreme Court of India. Soon as these students, some 30,000 students, had to miss their exams, they immediately went to the Supreme Court. This was last month in March. The Supreme Court said, there is no urgency. We will hear this case after the Hindu festival of Holi. And the Hindu festival of Holi has come and gone on 18th of March. Just yesterday, the Chief Justice said, all right, when he was pushed by the petitioners, he said, all right, we'll probably schedule a hearing in the next couple of days. The list is endless. In Kashmir, the only Muslim majority province of India, in 2017 and 18, for 2 consecutive years, the Supreme Court of India ruled that the special status that was guaranteed to Kashmir under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution was a permanent part of the Indian Constitution. The Article 370, this is a bit of technical language, there was a special article written in India's Constitution guaranteeing the special status for Kashmir. And for 2 years, in 2017 and 18, the Supreme Court of India ruled that this special status, this article guaranteeing special status, was not up for debate. It had now, over the decades, become a permanent part of India's constitution. The very next year in 2019, Mr. Modi decided to do away with Article 370. To this day, the Supreme Court has not heard the challenge to that decision of the Modi government. We can go on and on and on and talk about, Professor Chopra talked about the 2002 Godhra violence, the burning of the train. He talked about the assassination of Harin Pandya, who was incidentally a leader of the RSS, but he dared to cross Narendra Modi. And at that point in time, the popular version and you can find it on the internet, is that assassins were hired, and they were hired by Amit Shah, who is currently India's home minister, to assassinate Harin Pandya. Subsequently, the assassin himself was assassinated by police officers owing allegiance to Amit Shah. But all of that has been buried by the Indian judiciary. A judge who was hearing that case turned up dead in the most mysterious circumstances. So most people, when I talk with officials from the Department of State, from the US Congress, I try and tell them, look, you have to understand, if you are going to think of the Indian judiciary as the way it used to be maybe decades ago, then you are not going to understand the full gravity of how things have gone in India. If you want to understand what's happening in India, then you have to understand that India's judiciary has become like the judiciary in China. It has become like the judiciary in Russia. It has become like the judiciary in any of those countries where authoritarianism reigns. That is what is happening. We need to understand that in India, all the democratic pillars have collapsed. The judiciary, legislatures, you will not find a single political party in India taking up the issue of religious persecution in India's legislatures, whether at the federal level, in India's parliament, or in the state level. If you look at India's election commission, the authorities that have been charged with by the Constitution of India to conduct free and fair elections, that has been completely thrown to the winds. The election commission is now a rubber stamp. It serially ignores blatant violations of election laws by Mr. Modi and by leaders of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and it says nothing. There are many instances of that. The criminal justice system, the wider criminal justice system, the police, the less said, the better. We have seen in recent weeks an escalation of violence. Every day there is violence against Muslims. We saw there was a mass call for genocide of Muslims in December of 2021, this entire calls for genocide is made at large events that are called by Hindu nationalists, especially Hindu saints wearing saffron robes. And one woman who is the self-styled leader of an organization called Hindu Mahasabha, which is more than 100 years old. And she openly said, we should be ready to kill 2 million of them being Muslims. And she has not been arrested. We have not heard of the police have not even questioned her. On the other hand, when a student leader named Umar Khalid, who is now on the list of the Freedom of Religion and Belief Victims list of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, Umar Khalid, along with thousands others, is in prison today in India. And Umar Khalid had given a speech some years ago in which he had said, referring to the RSS, he had said, the RSS was the agents of the British colonial masters. And High Court judges 2 days ago said that this is an obnoxious speech. I mean, we must understand, the Americans must understand, speech is not protected in India. It is just not protected. It is any police officer, any politician can decide at their whim to basically prosecute any citizen for any speech. And of course, it's only the opponents of the government, the critics of the government who are arrested, who are tried for free speech. It is never the supporters of the BJP, the RSS, the Hindu nationalism. In conclusion, I would like to say that where India is headed as of now is a complete absence of the rule of law. That is the real problem. I live in the United States. I can show you of course, there are many issues with the criminal justice system in the United States, especially the African American community has long complained, and rightly so, that there is inherent bias in the criminal justice system against them. And yet, I would say, comparing it with India, there would be a reasonable assumption based on experience that if being a minority myself in the United States, if I am attacked, the criminal justice system would kick in and it would work in an unfair and an unbiased manner. But that has completely collapsed in India. The rule of law does not exist anymore. It exists only to be abused, to be misused, and to be leveraged to target not just religious minorities such as Muslims and Christians, but also human rights defenders, also social minorities like the Dalits and the Adivasis. And that is, so the criminal justice system has become a serial offender in this game. That needs to be exist. The last point that I want to make is that I hope that in the future, in the next year and the year after, the USCIRF, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, will upgrade its reporting on India. And of course, while continuing to recommend the designation of country of particular concern for India, they would also, USCIRF will also name the entities of particular concern. And I can name them right away for USCIRF. The biggest of them is the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. The RSS needs to be declared internationally as a terrorist organization. The RSS has many offshoots. They include the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, which has its counterpart, although they pretend that they are separate, but ideologically they're absolutely together, and there are tons of evidence to show that they work together. It is the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America. But back in India, the Vishwa Hindu, the RSS, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, the Bajrang Dal, these are the leading entities that are persecuting religious minorities, but also government agencies. The National Investigative Agency, NIA, which was founded after 2008, has completely shown itself to be one of the key persecutors of Muslims and Christians in India. Similarly, the CRPF, the Central Reserve Police Force, the Indian Army, we need to look at them, their role in religious persecution across Kashmir. We have to understand that the level of religious persecution that is going on in India is completely unmatched and unprecedented anywhere in the world, for the sheer reason that India has 1.4 billion people. It has been called the world's largest democracy because China is a totalitarian country and India has 1.4 billion people, and it practices in name an electoral democracy. But that is all going to be, very soon, it's going to be a thing of the past. The United States, the USCIRF, the last column of the USCIRF report talks about the key US policy, and it acknowledges that US and India are very close partners. Allow me to end by saying that the United States foreign policy is going to suffer immeasurably if it continues to behave in an ostrich-like manner and ignore the violations of human rights and religious freedom in India, because an India that goes up in flames will hardly serve to be a reliable and stable ally for the United States. Thank you so much.